Let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to Before the Valley. Hello Nikolai, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad myself.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking what to ask you in the introduction of the episode. And I know that you started doing something very interesting recently.
I knew it.
You're trying to build a habit. And here we are discussing similar stuff. What's improving your performance? And this is one of the stuff that could potentially be revolutionary when it comes to high achievers. So can you tell us, what are you doing now? What are you trying to test? And how is it going so far?
Okay, but I'm doing two things, two new habits. So the second one you don't know about. The second one is not using my phone in the morning. So
nice.
I'm not checking it at all. But I think what you're referring to is my cold showers, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I'm doing cold showers for 3 days now. And it really is, I think, well, it's not revolutionary, but there's a very, there was a saying, I think, a talk with, what was his name? I can't remember, from the Rose guy who's speaking with Tim Ferriss. What was his name?
Kevin Rose,
exactly. So he was doing cold showers. I think he's still doing cold showers. So he was explaining how the cold shower makes his day, 10% better, 10 to 20% better. And I would describe it in the same way. So if I'm in a bad mood, I feel less in a bad mood if I take the cold shower. If I'm feeling great after the cold shower, I'm feeling fantastic. And it's very energizing. It's like a cup of coffee for me. And why I'm doing it is because it's something that is uncomfortable. So I'm trying to put myself out of my comfort zone intentionally. So every time I'm putting on the cold water, because I start in the morning with warm water and then I put on the cold water at the end. Every time I'm just like, I don't want to do it. It's like, and then I don't even think about what I'm doing. I just like snap it to cold, and then I can just like feel it coming. I'm listening to music and stuff just to kind of sustain myself throughout the day.
To get yourself out of this situation consciously and to just do it kind of like unconsciously. I need to put it on the cold water and be somewhere else when it comes to your mind. Do you know there's so many people doing it? Because you mentioned Kevin Rose, there's like Jocko Willink that Casper mentioned yesterday.
Jocko Willink as well.
Who else? Like, I remember listening to many people that were doing cold showers. And, I was going to mention Matt Devella.
Yeah,
because he did a 30 days experiment with this. And as far as I know, it works for some people because based on Matt Devella, he didn't like it that much. But other people, let's say Jocko Willink, he's doing it on a regular basis. So it's something that I would say people need to try. And if it works for them, and if it has the same effect as you mentioned to improve your emotional state, keep doing it. If not, just ditch it and stick to your comfort zone in terms of showers.
I watched a video about like cold showers recently about another YouTuber. I can't remember the exact YouTuber, so I'm gonna link the video after in the caption. So what he was saying is, at the end of the day, it's just a shower. So it's not something, as you described it, revolutionary, but it improves your day by a bit. And it's something it's a good way to start the day, I think.
Yeah, it also has impact on your physical body, your muscles, as far as I know, when it comes to recovery. So it's something that could be tried. I'm interested to try it, but I'm waiting for you to get some feedback. And
far so good. So far it's working out for me. I'm not planning to stop doing it. So
great.
It's nice.
Happy for that. Interested to hear more from you in later episodes and in the near future. So do you want to jump into the first topic, not episode?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to introduce it?
Yes. Okay. So the first topic for today is going to be related to empathy and how important it is to understand the counterparty in arguments or conversations when there's a disagreement or when you need to reach some kind of a conclusion which is mutual. And we came to the conclusion that this is going to be a very good topic to discuss in the podcast because recently we had a very, very important conversation with our partner Nicola when it comes to what terms are we gonna work on, and just the overall idea of our working strategy when it comes to our new venture. And because it's been the first time when we have such an important conversation with him, there were many stuff that we were disagreeing on. And having those conversations, I think all realized that it's very, very crucial to understand what's the point of the other party and try to come up to a conclusion in which there is no winner or loser, but every party is living it as a winner to some extent, because making compromise, you eventually have what you want or what satisfies you. So therefore we thought that empathy is very, very important in business and such conversations, and we thought it's a good thing to analyze and discuss in the podcast.
Yeah, and I think what you just mentioned is having winners and losers. I think empathy makes you realize what's the best case scenario for everyone, because if you don't look at the other people's point of view, it's very often that what you subjectively experience is not what's objectively the best case scenario for all. And I think it was the same in our situation. So until we reached the agreement with each other, the three of us had to look at each other's perspective and point of view, so to speak. And I also think empathy, the topic, is more broad than that. It's not just disagreements, and in business specifically. It's also leading well. I think you need to find out what people are motivated by. So for example, with our team, I think every single person gets motivated by a different thing, and having constant conversations with them and then thinking on the conversations and putting the conscious effort to get their point of view is very important to be able to lead them well as well. What do you think about this? Like, what's your experience with, I guess, leadership and our team? And because I think initially when we started, we were very inexperienced in terms of understanding each other, but also with the people we work with. And steadily, we've been improving switching our perspective.
I do agree with you when it comes to the improvement which we have noticed. I think that this is one of the greatest things that I've improved personally from the business and from PP Network and our experience with it, because initially I was very emotional when it came to different disagreements with you, with other people that we started working at, Marcus, our developers, and I never cared to that extent of what they want and what they need. I always thought that what I think now is the right thing, and that there is no other point. I need to get this somehow through them and for them to accept it. So I was very, very emotional in terms of seeing that they don't agree with me. However, with the passage of time, I realized that having this emotional intelligence is crucial in order to agree with somebody, in order to understand that it's not only you in such conversations, it's the other party as well. So I would say that through experience and through different problems that we've encountered and disagreements, I've managed to understand how important empathy is. But something which you mentioned, which is very interesting, is that empathy is not only when it comes to having disagreements or conversations with other people, but it's also about trying to understand what they want and providing it as a leader. And it makes a lot of sense that when you have more than one person in a team, and when it's not only you, that you have to care about what the others want and what are their needs. So we have to be there must be a lot of empathy.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned, and I know that you were quite emotional when we started, and I think you very often said that this can be used as a strength of yours. And I think emotion can indeed be used as a strength and as something to motivate other people and to push them. But I think you first need to realize if that's the best thing to do in the situation. So would me being emotional influence the other person in the right way? and then you can let your emotion go, I think. So for example,
Yes.
if you see that someone is, I don't know, unmotivated because he thinks our idea, let's say, is not as good as we think, the passion that you're gonna express through emotion can make him believe and see stuff that he otherwise wouldn't see, points you're making that otherwise don't make too much sense. So I think it's important to, don't get me wrong, I think empathy doesn't exclude you being emotional. It's just you being emotional in the right way and at the right moment, because you see
I agree.
the other person's perspective.
Do you know what I do now? Because I'm still emotional. I haven't changed as a person, but when it comes to such conversations, whenever I feel this pressure, that's like this, I don't know, emotional state that is like kind of spiking, I'm like, wait, take a step back, understand what the other person is saying, and then react. So I use it, we're turning to the point of emotion to some extent, but I use this gap between what's happening and what my reaction is to try to, and I use it in a way that I try to understand what the other person wants and needs. This changes my reaction. And you said it right. Emotions are good, but you shouldn't follow them blindly. They can guide you, but you should consider objectively what's happening to the extent that you can, of course.
Yeah, and it's also a question of what do you wanna, what's the purpose of your conversation? Well, you want the other person to understand what you're saying. So if you think about it in this way, it's impossible, I think, to do it successfully if you're not not empathetic towards the other person and see how he sees things, so you can kind of explain it in a particular way. And I think thinking about the results of a conversation is very important. And I want to make there's this distinction I read about of emotional and I guess they call it intellectual empathy. So that would be
Yes.
Intellectual empathy would be you putting the conscious effort to understand someone, while emotional empathy is more natural, so to speak. And I think, seeing it this way, I think the emotional part is very hard to develop because it's more temperamental, I guess.
Especially, I would say, in business, because you can develop it. I'm thinking now that if you have a friend who is suffering, you would probably have this emotional empathy. You would try to somehow make him happy and think, okay, wait, what happened? It's not that bad. And this is kind of unconsciously happening. It's emotional. But in business, your main objective is to end up being the winner. So you have to have this. What was the other one? Rational.
I guess it's rational,
empathy.
or intellectual, something like this.
Yeah. So it depends on the context, but it's a very, very good distinction between both. So what was your point? Sorry.
Yeah, my point was that I think the intellectual one can be easily developed by just taking a step back, start to think about other people's contexts and other people's situation and what exactly they're saying, and actually putting in the conscious effort to think on all of this content.
On their point of view, yes.
Yeah, well, the emotional bit, I think it's a bit harder to develop because I genuinely think it's more to do with your temperament and I guess how you were brought up and stuff like that. So it's
I agree.
more difficult to develop.
Yeah. So I'm thinking now that what's the importance of empathy and why is it important? And I remember that when I was reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie, he said that the take of a person is more important to him than, let's say, a tornado or something very, very major happening to many people. So he cares more about his personal state, and therefore, if you see it from the point of view of empathy, it's very important to understand it because he cares most about this, about what's his point of view is, or how is he gonna end up in this conversation. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. And the other thing, just to mention, it was cognitive empathy.
I see.
And I think it's something else as well. I think emotional empathy is also valuable for establishing relationships, which on the business side of things can be very beneficial in the long term. So for example, if you sympathize with what is perceived by the other person as bad or what's making them suffer in a way, then it's much easier to, I guess, make the relationships, and not even with suffering, but even with happiness and stuff like that. It's sort of the connection you're making with the other person, and just like, I guess, putting yourself in their shoes in that way. So I don't know how to develop emotional empathy. What do you think? Like, I guess feeling what the other person feels. I think it's a very difficult thing to do. I guess putting yourself in the other person's context. What do you think about this?
Probably when you develop the cognitive one, you to some extent influence your emotional empathy, because subconsciously you start thinking more about others and what they feel and what they think, and you try to synchronize your state with them so that you understand each other better. However, I agree that I see it as something that is developed from a very early age, and depending on how you're brought up. So the only thing that we can do as professionals and also in our personal life, I think, is to develop the cognitive one and do our utmost to see what impacts us, what impacts our understanding of other people, and try to find this specific moment and build on it.
Yeah.
What's your experience? Like, when did you realize how important empathy is? Or was it something that you had since the beginning of starting the business? Or, I don't know, because as I told you, for me, the main point that helped me develop this cognitive empathy was the business that we started.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes with, the business is definitely a big part of it. I think interacting with more and different people made me realize how people have different values, for example. So people would value different things. So it's not what you find valuable that is always valuable for someone else. And, I think that's also the cultural side of it, of me coming here and experiencing different cultures and how differently people see the world. And I realized that to, I guess, establish any connection with someone, you need to realize what's actually valuable for them, and that is developed with experience, I guess, and speaking with other people. The other thing is business. I fully agree, because if you don't show any empathy while building your business, you're gonna lose the people you work with, and you kind of learn that along the way, just because you see people being less motivated when you disregard what they told you in advance. And it's also my personal private life, I would say. The relationships I had, it's just the situations I got myself in made me realize. I think empathy is being empathetic, becoming more empathetic. It's very dependent on your experience with other people, because while growing up, I would say I wasn't exposed to that many different people.
Would you say that disagreements play a big role in the understanding how important it is to realize what the other person is feeling or thinking?
I would say consequences for me were a big thing. So if I initially, I would have a disagreement with someone, let's say, especially close people, and then I wouldn't care that much. It's bad to say that, but that's the way I was while growing up. I wouldn't care that much about, if I think something, I used to think this way. If I think something's right and I have the objective reasons to think this is right, then I wouldn't consider that much, the other side. I would try to make my point.
Very narrow-minded, Pizza.
Yeah, that was very narrow-minded of me. Yeah, but then you realize you're very often wrong. This is a very good point, I think. Realizing that you're wrong most of the times makes you start listening to other people a lot more. And if it I used to be this way, I used to think, okay, this is the right thing to do, so why is this person not doing the right thing? Then you realize, okay, this thing I thought is valuable, it's actually not as valuable as I thought, so I was wrong. And then you start listening to everyone else of what they find valuable and trying to find what's valuable and what's the what's right for yourself as well. And I'm speaking about this in a business perspective as well. For example, if I thought initially when we started our business, if I thought something should be done, I would be very straightforward about it. I would be like, okay, we need to, I think you would agree with this. We need to do this thing, and we need to work on this thing. And then getting in arguments with you and seeing myself, like the projects we were building, seeing myself being wrong very often, I'll be like, okay, maybe my point of view is not the right point of view
right one.
all of the times. And I think that comes with maturity as well. Once you start growing, you that comes naturally. I think the more mistakes you do, the more, I guess, this feeling of, or this listening you develop of other people's thoughts gets more intense, I would say.
Yeah, because listening leads to you understanding. And linking to Chris Voss is one of the most annoying people on social media, because he's having a masterclass and they're promoting his masterclass very, very heavily. So every time you open masterclass.com, I'm not doing a promotion now for them, but afterwards you're gonna see your feed full of Chris Voss. He's a negotiator, and he said that it might sound boring, but the most important thing when it comes to negotiation is to be curious and to be listening very, very attentively what the other person is saying, because that's the only way that you can understand them and try to come up to this middle ground where you're both satisfied. And
it's very often the case, I think you mentioning that now, is it's very often the case that the other person wouldn't tell you straight away what they actually want. Or let's say you trying to figure out what your employee wants, and it's very often that they are not sure, or what they're telling you is not exactly what they want. So I think it's very important to be curious and just start asking more questions. Just ask,
yes,
okay, why did you do this? Why did you do this? How's that working out for you? And you see patterns, I would say. So these patterns make you realize, okay, this person actually wants this. So this is more important for them. This is something I just wanted to add up to.
Yeah. So you're saying that asking questions is crucial for the understanding of each other.
And asking the right questions, yeah.
Yes. And this is very, very in contradiction to the idea that when we speak, we have to speak a lot rather than listening a lot. Because when we speak and we're only trying to put our point of view, we're to some extent ignoring what the other person is saying.
Yeah, you don't even know if he agrees with you, if you just speak.
Yes. So ask questions and be curious. And I would say that don't be afraid to take a step back and be quiet for a bit and just listen and analyze what the other person is doing or saying. This will help you to understand them, and you'll be more empathetic, which eventually could lead to you having the right conclusion or something that satisfies all of you.
It's a conscious effort, I would say, because in my transition from I know it all to okay, let's start listening more and more, I had to put conscious effort to keep my mouth shut. So I would.
This is a very good point. That you're not always right, and in order to understand whether you're right or not, you need to somehow connect all these pieces of the puzzle, which could happen only when you have new information coming in, instead of you just repeating what you already know. And yeah, good.
Do you have anything else to add to the topic? Or...
I have some interesting points, and probably one which I think is gonna add to the to how important this topic is coming from Chris Voss said it. It's from Goldman Sachs, one of the biggest investment banks. They're number one when it comes to deals and deal making. And they said that negotiation is a very crucial element. And when it comes to negotiations, because I'm turning more to the business side, you have to be greedy. You have to always want the best for you. But this greediness should be long term, not short term. So you want the best for you now. You have to make compromise. And in the end, in the long term, you have to build those partnerships or those connections with people, which can only happen when you provide for them, when you understand what they want. But in the long term, you're a winner because you are greedy and you get what you want, but it's not one-time event.
Yeah, and getting back to our story recently, the conclusion we reached is something that is equally beneficial to each of the sides, I think. And in that way, everyone wins. So you develop the relationship with, the other person, you build the partnership, and then you get the most out of the situation for yourself, but also for everyone else involved. I think that's a very important point, yeah. You should be thinking long-term when negotiating.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to the second topic.
Yeah.
What's the second topic?
So the second topic is the topic of role models. And how we came to that topic is you brought it up, but I was thinking it's a very interesting topic to talk about, because I think our role models while growing up are what shaped us and made us the way we are. They also set our direction and what we want to achieve in our lives. And I thought, looking at again from a personal point of view, it might be valuable and interesting just to see how important role models are and how they influenced us. So that's the second topic. And I would just want to shortly start with some other points which just prove how important having a role model is in your life. So the first thing I wanted to bring up is a very sad statistic, which is that children that grow up in a single family without a father, let's say, are much more likely to commit crimes, and that's like times more likely. So depending on the research, the numbers would vary, but it just shows that, having a role model sets your direction, shows you what's right, and I guess inspires you, shows you that there's something worth working for and fighting for. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I wanted to bring up is, again, from a psychological point of view, one of the most famous psychologists, Carl Jung, speaks of archetypes, and how archetypes, which is, an archetype is basically the stereotypical character in a story. So for example, the archetype of the hero is a collective way that we all think of the hero as someone who is fighting for something noble, let's say, and is going through suffering. And I think role models in your mind, or at least in my mind, are very often experienced as such heroes. And again, archetypes, he's arguing, are what influences what shows us how to behave in certain situations. So this is just another point that just proved the importance of role models.
Interesting.
I think.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I'm thinking now whether we all have role models all the time, or it's something that we focus on finding. Because you said that the parent situation, parents are a role model to young kids, but they influence them and they define what the kids are gonna develop like to some extent. So when they're missing, it leads to bad consequences, them being more likely to commit a crime.
Well, not necessarily, but on average, yeah.
Yes, on average. I mean, yeah, based on the statistics. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking whether role models, as I said, are an integral part of our lives.
I mean,
what do you think?
You can also see it like in the animal kingdom, how small pups learn is through seeing what the older one does. So I think it's very similar. That this is a very simplistic way to see it, of course, but I think a lot of what we learn by example. So it's you seeing what your father does, let's say your parents does, in your case your bigger brother does. So you have someone to look up to, and what they do serves as an example for you to learn as well. And I think that's essentially what a role model would be. Yeah.
Interesting point here, that it is to some extent that you learn from people, you see them doing something that you want to be successful at as well, and you learn from them. But on the other hand, you also learn from the stuff that they do wrong. And this is saving a lot of time, and it's making you even better than your role models eventually, because if you have a role model, it doesn't mean that you have to focus blindly on being identical copy of him or her, but you can have one role model, but on the other hand learn from somebody else. And I was thinking that in the process of, like, with the passage of time, we have different role models. And my example is that when I was younger, as I mentioned to you yesterday, my first role model, apart from my parents, was my secondary school teacher. She changed my perspective of how should I behave, what kind of person should I be, because I was a very, very crazy kid. And then she introduced to me Stoicism. She was speaking about the Roman Empire. I wasn't seeing them the way I see them now, but she made me think about, wait, I need to change my attitude. I need to improve. I need to become better, because look at what this woman is saying to me. However, now I have different role models, and I'm saying all of this, as I said, to illustrate that with the passage of time, our role models change because we need different stuff.
This is a very good point, and I'm very happy that we reached the same conclusion, because I was thinking on the same topic yesterday and today, and I came to the same conclusion without us communicating at all. I think throughout my life I had different role models. Some of them I kept having even until now, but you do have different role models, and you try to take the best of them in different situations. So for example, in philosophy, I would have my high school teacher.
Yes.
She was a great inspiration for me. So I would be very inspired by her. I would, see her as a role model of what a good philosopher and a good person is. So that's one example. And then I would start reading books, and all the books I would be reading would be people that I get inspired by, I look up to, and I use as role models. And the greatest one is obviously Elon Musk, because I'm a huge Elon fanboy. So I read his biography. And after reading the biography, I was like, oh my God, like, this guy is a genius. And the way he does stuff is just insanely motivational for me. And I want to be like him. I was thinking that way. And now, like, reading more, let's say, Peter Thiel, Tim Ferriss, Jordan Peterson, these are all people that I get inspired by. I use as role models. And in different situations, they would kind of shape and mold my behavior. And yes, I guess with time you get more of these role models, and you build a better character, personality based on them, because they influence you in that way.
And when you learn from different people, you develop different aspects of your personality. And you, going back to your previous role models, you sometimes see that they are doing stuff that you don't accept anymore, or you don't agree 100% with.
Mm-hmm.
While I think that initially, when you start to build yourself and you start to learn from other people, when you have limited number of role models or people to learn from, your perspective is limited, so you kind of blindly accept it as the true. And the more you learn, the more you grow, you can become more critical. And this is because you are becoming, as you said, shaped by all of them, not by only one. And the fact that there are other people influencing you now makes you able to, I don't know, to just see stuff that you weren't seeing before.
Yeah, I have an opinion on this. And my opinion is it's largely influenced by Jordan Peterson. And I think when you have, because he has a similar point, that the more situations you expose yourself to, and in this case, the more role models you have, the more people you start admiring or look up to, you notice patterns, and you notice what you admire in each of these people's behaviors, and you kind of, that becomes your, ultimate value. That's what you, for example, let's say you see that they're all very good planners, let's say. That's, again, very superficial, but it's just for the sake of the argument.
Yeah.
They're very good planners, all of them. So in your head, your ideal, what you want to be, what you want to become one day, how you want to do stuff is the same way that they do. So for example, in the case of planning, you want to plan stuff very carefully from now on, just because this becomes your ideal. So
yeah,
my point was that having, more role models, more people you look up to, you kind of get these patterns, and you can exclude different types of their characters and different, flaws that they have or extremes that they have that you don't agree with. But at the end of the day, you still get to learn from them, and they're still your role model just because they're ideal in this particular way.
Yeah, because there is something which you admire in them and you learn from it. But something good is that if you learn from different people and you diversify your portfolio of role models.
That's a good way to look at it.
Let's say if it's planning, which you admire in, let's say, Tim Ferriss, but then you see that Peter Thiel is also a very good planner, but there is something specific about his planning that you really like, you're gonna add it to what you've already learned from Tim Ferriss, and eventually your planning is gonna be very, very tailored to your needs, and you're gonna become the master of your planning just by collecting all of these points.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point with, focusing on needs and what you mentioned, just because depending, like if your need is, let's say, pitch in front of investors, your role model for that particular thing would be the CEO of TEDx, let's say. That's the first person I came up with. But yeah, you would be focusing on great public speakers, and that's because you need to become good at public speaking, so that becomes the person you look up to. So that's a good point, I think.
Quick question. How do you learn from role models, your role models? How do you dive into their personalities or professional experience in order to learn? What's your strategy?
Well, my strategy is, I think you learn by example from them, so you have to see how they behave, and the only way to find that out is read their biographies, watch their lectures, see how they think, see what was their experience to come to the point they were. So for example, I was listening to a Reid Hoffman lecture recently, so he was explaining how he was thinking about things while building his companies, and that way that exposes me to his experience, and I can take his example for me as well. What about you?
I have a more structured approach, because when I listen to a podcast of Tim Ferriss, I find somebody who is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I do is I look for them on Google, and if they have a website, I go to the website, and from them I jump to different sources. I start watching, as I said, their YouTube videos. I try to really dive into this personality and to this person, if I admire them and if there's something which I really liked within the podcast. And I try to be, as I told you, a bit more structured when it comes to the approach, and see every different source from where I can learn about this person. And the main sources, as I said, are, first of all, the website. Second of all, I start following them on social media. Let's say Kevin Rose, I started following him on Twitter, and I love the things that he's posting. Then I start checking if they have other podcasts or if they have any other interviews. And last but not least, if there are some YouTube videos which could be indirectly related to them. It could be somebody else talking about a specific person. They could have lectures, as you said. But really dive into it. And this brings me to the point how valuable the internet is. Yeah. Man, I've been repeating this to you that I am very grateful about all the opportunities we are able to learn from all of these high achievers just by the click of a button, which before wasn't possible.
Yeah.
And now you can expose yourself 24/7 and just become better, just become the person which you want to.
Yeah, and also this can help you tailor what you're searching for to your needs specifically. So for example, if you want to see Kevin Rowe's investment strategy, you probably can see the companies he invested in or the way he thinks about this one particular thing, while back then you would have to, I don't know, read a book and hope to find something. So my point is that I would add to your structured approach, think about what you want to get out of this person.
Yes.
And then look for that particular thing.
Yeah, it's not just diving into it and trying to absorb everything like a sponge. Mm-hmm. It's more that if you find something in a person that you particularly like, that, let's say, Kevin Rowe, he has a very bold statement about something. You then dive into all of his sources and you try to find how he came up to this conclusion, or what's behind it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, very good point, because otherwise it's just pointless. You're gonna be jumping from person to person.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So do you have anything to add to this?
No. I mean, the only thing which I want to show off with is that, not show off, but to share that, as I told you, our role models, I think, change. And a great example of this is currently I'm very, very influenced by Marcus Aurelius and his philosophy. And I'm reading the book, I'm watching videos online. And this person, the way he was thinking, is shaping my thoughts as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just an illustration.
Yeah, while growing up, you probably wouldn't understand half of what he's saying.
Yeah.
Because I used to not understand the Stoics very well. Yeah. Okay, so coming to the conclusion of this episode, I would like to read a quote, and why I want to give some context around why we are reading this specific quote. And it's a quote that was used by Elon Musk, who's someone who I use as a role model, and he was quoting someone who he uses as a role model. So the quote itself is not that relevant to, you know, the podcast, but it's relevant in a way that Carl Sagan, the quote is from Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan was someone that Elon Musk admired, and it's someone that, well,
led to him becoming and doing what he's doing now to some extent.
Exactly, yeah. What he said influenced him and set his direction. So the quote is the following: "Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother, every father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam." So this, Carl Sagan was referring to the Earth after one of the pictures, and the Earth is a very small dot on that picture.
It's from a space station, right? It's just showing how small the Earth, our planet, is in the whole galaxy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a space station, but it's something they launch into space, I think. I can't remember what it is exactly, but yeah, the point is that Elon used this and this fear that we are so insignificant and we can get extinguished pretty much by an asteroid that comes every thousands of years. So he used this as an inspiration to start SpaceX and try to set a colony on Mars. And that's why he also doesn't agree completely with the quote, and he's saying at the end, that's not true, we have Mars as an option. So I think it's a good example. Yeah,
that's a very good example. And something else I remembered now, there's another quote which is from Tim Ferriss, which is a good summary of this episode to some extent. It's, you're the average of the 5 person you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And this, in the context of what we described, doesn't mean of the physical people that you surround yourself with, but also the people that you follow and your role models. So choose them very, very carefully.
Yeah, the people you surround yourself with can be role models as well, I think. So it's a very good quote. Yeah. Your parents, for example.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So this was the episode for today. It was an interesting one. I would say that the podcasts are becoming to some extent a bit more personal. At least this one was. We're going to see in the future. Mm-hmm. So as we said last time, we are more than happy to hear if you have any suggestions for topics, and would be more than happy to discuss them if you think that this is going to help you to see another perspective and to come to some kind of a new conclusion, or you might disagree with us. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and that's all for now.
Leave your feedback and a like if you enjoyed the episode, and do subscribe. A big percentage of you are unsubscribed, so do subscribe.
yeah, we have 49 subscribers. We're very close to hitting this milestone of 50. Do subscribe.
Let's do 50 after this episode.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Right. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
watching. Bye bye.